I never thought I'd see him again, let alone in a place like this. The Wilshire Grand Hotel shimmered beneath the night sky, every light reflecting off glass and steel as if the building itself were dressed for the occasion. The rooftop had been transformed into something unreal, a carefully curated dream of softly scented candles, silk-draped tables, and a piano melody that drifted lazily through the air, blending with the glow of the Los Angeles skyline below. The Monteverde Education Foundation Gala was never a small affair. It drew entrepreneurs with polished smiles, artists wrapped in quiet confidence, and media figures hungry for moments worth capturing. For me, it was more than an event. It was my first step back into public life after years of keeping myself deliberately unseen. I wasn't there for the glamour or the attention. I had a reason that was deeply personal, and I hadn't come alone. I entered with 4 young people at my side, each tall, composed, and striking in their own way. They moved together naturally, like a unit that didn't need to speak to stay in sync. Conversations around us faltered as heads turned. It wasn't just our appearance that drew attention, it was the unmistakable connection between us, something people sensed even if they couldn't name it. I felt eyes on me from every corner of the rooftop, but one stare sliced through the noise and made my breath hitch for a single, dangerous heartbeat. When I turned toward it, my chest tightened and my heart sank. It was him, Gabriel Whitmore, the man who had once been my entire world, the man who swore he would never leave, right up until the moment he learned I couldn't have children. The day he walked away without a backward glance, it felt like my soul fractured with every step he put between us. 17 years. That was how long it had been since he left. Gabriel stood among the guests in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, every detail of him still precise. His salt and pepper hair was swept neatly back, and his eyes, sharp and familiar, hadn't lost their intensity. But this time, there was something new in them: confusion. His gaze shifted from me to the 4 young people beside me, and I watched that confusion twist into unmistakable panic. Because he saw it, there was no denying it now. Each face carried a piece of him: Tyler's pale gray eyes, Alina's high sculpted cheekbones, Lucas's strong, unmistakable jaw, Isla's crooked half-smile. Details too specific, too intimate to explain away. He had left me believing I would never be a mother, and now the truth stood directly in front of him. I felt Isla's fingers curl into mine as she leaned closer, her voice barely audible. "Is that him, Mom?" I nodded, my eyes never leaving Gabriel. "Think he'll run?" Lucas asked under his breath, his tone balanced between humor and caution. "He won't," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "A man like him doesn't run when the truth traps him. He'll try to face it, because right now he needs answers more than anyone else in this room." Gabriel started toward us, his gaze locked, his movements measured. He wore his confidence like armor, but I noticed the slight tremor in his hand as it tightened around his wineglass. No one else would have seen it, only me. When he reached us, just a few steps away, he stopped. His eyes moved slowly across each face beside me, as though something inside him was crashing wave after wave. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded rough, almost foreign. "Samantha." I looked at him evenly, without warmth or bitterness, only the calm that comes from surviving every kind of heartbreak. "I thought you couldn't." I lifted my chin slightly. "This is Tyler, Alina, Lucas, and Isla." Each name landed heavily, striking the fragile structure of beliefs he'd built over the years. He started to say something, then thought better of it. And in that moment, I knew Gabriel Whitmore, the man who left in search of a perfect future, was standing face to face with something he never imagined, and I still hadn't told him everything, not even close. He stood there as if his legs had forgotten their purpose. His eyes flicked back to the kids again, desperate for logic, for an explanation that didn't exist. The resemblance only grew clearer with every second. No words could hide it anymore. "They're yours?" he asked, his tone tight, almost breaking. I didn't answer immediately. I wanted him to sit with the weight of what he had denied, rejected, and run from for nearly 2 decades. "Yes," I said at last, holding his unsteady gaze. "They are my children." Gabriel stepped back as if struck. He looked at Tyler, now a confident young man with dark hair and those unmistakable gray eyes, a reflection of Gabriel's younger self. Then Elena, whose deep gaze and perfectly arched brows mirrored me, yet carried his presence undeniably. Lucas and Isla remained still, their eyes never leaving the man unraveling in front of them. "But, Samantha, you said you couldn't. The doctor said—" I cut him off, my tone even. "We believed that once." Silence settled between us. I saw him bite his lip, his grip tightening around the glass like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "Whose children are they?" The question slipped out reflexively, born of fear rather than doubt. I gave a small smile, not mocking, just heavy with years of restraint. "Gabriel," I said clearly, "they're mine, and they're yours." It was as if the room faded around him, sound dulled. His eyes darkened as reality pulled him under. No, that's not possible. This isn't real." Tyler stepped forward, hands in his pockets, his expression cool and unyielding. "Whether you believe it or not is your choice. The truth doesn't need permission to exist." Gabriel looked like he wanted to respond, but no words came. I could see his mind racing, trying to rearrange the impossible. The man who once commanded empires now stood frozen before 4 familiar strangers. I let out a slow breath. "If you want the truth, I'll tell you," I said quietly, "but not here, not in front of everyone waiting to watch us fall apart." He nodded numbly, his eyes still fixed on the kids. "I need time." Lucas let out a soft laugh, stripped of humor. "Good thing you've had 17 years to prepare." I turned to the kids. "Let's go." Without hesitation, I led them away, leaving Gabriel alone in the center of the ballroom. I felt his gaze on our backs, heavy with regret and fear. As the elevator doors slid shut, Isla looked up at me and whispered, "Mom, will you tell him everything?" I studied my reflection in the mirrored wall, a woman no longer shaped by abandonment, a mother of 4 carrying a truth no one else owned. "Yes," I said, "but I'll tell it my way, and only if he's brave enough to hear all of it." The story wasn't finished, but one thing was clear: we didn't have to lower our heads anymore, least of all me. Gabriel Whitmore didn't sleep that night. He left the gala in a haze, haunted by 4 young faces that cracked the shell he'd built over 17 years. Every step back to his penthouse felt weighted. Every wall reminded him of what he had walked away from. By morning, he called his private assistant, Mason Blair, discreet, precise, and unwaveringly loyal. "Mason, I need you to find everything you can on Samantha Everett," Gabriel said, his voice low and tense, "especially after 2007. Medical, legal, financial, anything." Mason didn't ask questions. "I'll begin immediately, sir." Gabriel barely left his desk that day. He sifted through old records, memories, fragments of a life he abandoned. Their wedding photo still sat in the bottom drawer, untouched. Near midnight, Mason called. "Sir, I found something significant." Gabriel straightened. "Tell me." Samantha entered a reproductive research program in late 2007, an experimental project called Nova Genesis, led by Dr. Alden Rives, highly confidential, focused on restoring fertility through stem cell and egg reactivation methods. "She was a participant?" Gabriel asked, his pulse racing. "Not just a participant," Mason replied. "She was one of the first 2 successful cases." Gabriel fell silent. "Any records on the children? Birth files?" Mason paused briefly. "All 4 children were born at Briarwood Medical Center within 2 years of her treatment. Each has DNA records." Gabriel held his breath. "They're all biologically yours, sir. 99.97% match." The world seemed to freeze. Gabriel stared at the screen, each child's profile impossible to deny. Father, Gabriel Whitmore. Mason kept speaking, but Gabriel heard nothing. The hollow weight settled in, not because he'd been deceived, but because he had been the one to walk away. He stared for hours at the ultrasound image attached to Elena's, his eldest. That should have been his moment. Near dawn, he called Mason back. "I need to see Dr. Alden Rives as soon as possible." The truth had surfaced, and this time Gabriel knew he had no right to run. Elsewhere in the city, I didn't yet know what Gabriel had uncovered, but when I saw his eyes that night, I knew he wasn't walking away again, and maybe it was time I told the whole story. Every choice, every impossible step. 3 days after the gala, the doorbell rang on a quiet afternoon. I didn't check the peephole, I already knew. When I opened the door, Gabriel stood there, not in a tuxedo, but with rolled sleeves and exhaustion written across his face. I stepped aside and let him in. Isla spoke first, her tone neutral. "Hi." Gabriel nodded. "Hello." The kids gathered in the living room, facing the man they had never known. Gabriel stood there, uninvited to sit. "I know I don't have the right," he began, "but I can't live without facing this. I need to know." Lucas crossed his arms, his gaze sharp. "Heard for what? To make yourself feel better for leaving before we were even born?" Gabriel swallowed hard. "I didn't know. Samantha once told me, you didn't know." Tyler cut in, his voice calm but heavy. "You didn't know about us, but you knew Mom. You knew the kind of person she was. Did it ever cross your mind that if she chose to be a mother, there was nothing that could stop her?" Gabriel was silent. I saw the turmoil in his eyes, an emotion I had never seen back when he walked away nearly 2 decades ago. Elena tilted her head, her eyes unreadable. "If you'd known back then, if you knew there was a chance to have kids with Mom, would you have stayed?" The question landed like thunder in a still afternoon. The room fell silent. Gabriel didn't answer right away. He walked toward the window, looked out, then turned back. "I want to say yes, that I would have stayed, that I would have fought for it." He paused. "But if I'm honest, who I was back then, I don't know. I was scared of a life I hadn't chosen, and the truth is, I chose to leave." Issa placed her cup on the table. "So what do you choose now?" Gabriel looked at each of them slowly, like he was trying to memorize their faces. "Now I choose not to run. I choose to take responsibility. Even if I'm never forgiven, I won't disappear again." Tyler stood and walked toward him, one man, one young man, face to face. "Your presence won't rewrite the past, but you can decide what to do with the present." I watched my children, each of whom I had raised without needing a father to define their worth, yet now they stood before him, not pushing him away, but asking questions. I stepped forward, calm but firm. "If you came here hoping to be welcomed, I can't promise that, but if you came to take responsibility, this door won't be locked." Gabriel nodded. For the first time, his eyes held something other than ambition or control. They held the desire to try again, if only a little. Lucas shrugged. "We don't need a dad, but sometimes it's not the worst thing to have someone willing to listen." Gabriel gave a small smile, a rare one, full of regret but open. He came back again that Sunday afternoon, unannounced. This time he brought a file folder and a box of waffle cookies from the bakery I used to love, the one that closed down nearly 8 years ago. He remembered, or at least tried to. I opened the door and saw him there, awkward but not timid. His eyes weren't guarded anymore. They were waiting, maybe for permission or a sign, or just a bit of hope. "I'm not expecting anything," Gabriel said, setting the cookies down. "I'm not stopping you, but this isn't up to me anymore." He nodded. "I understand." At that moment, footsteps echoed from the stairs. The kids had just returned from the movies. They entered the room, sunlight glowing on their hair and shoulders. Isla noticed Gabriel first, her eyes briefly surprised. Then Elena, Tyler, and Lucas, each with their own reaction, suspicion, curiosity, a bit of caution. Gabriel stood, hands clasped tightly to still their trembling. "I know I don't deserve it," he began, "but I'd like the chance to get to know you if you'll allow it." Lucas raised an eyebrow, voice dry. Get to know us how? Picnics, Sunday dinners, birthday cards for the next 17 years? Gabriel didn't argue. Nothing at all, if that's what you want. I'll be here when you need me, or if you ever just want to know. Tyler stepped closer, locking eyes with him. You sure about that? Gabriel nodded. I don't know where to start, but I'll be here, even if it's just to listen. The room fell quiet. Time seemed to pause, the outside world fading away, leaving only the sound of steady breathing and the weight of possibility. Isla turned to me. What do you think, Mom? I shook my head gently. I've already walked my path. The rest is up to you. Elena placed her bag on the couch, then looked at Gabriel. Do you have a car? Gabriel blinked. Yes. Then take us to the ice cream shop at Clover and Vine. It's open until 8. We can start with something simple. Gabriel nodded, smiling for the first time that day. Not wide, but sincere. Lucas sighed. I'll go. Not for him, just because the ice cream there is actually good. Tyler turned to me. You want to come? I shook my head and smiled. Not this time, you go. As the door closed behind them, I sat by the window. The sunset stretched across the neighborhood like a bronze blanket. I didn't wish for a miracle. I wasn't expecting magic. But even the smallest first steps are still steps worth taking. That night, when the kids returned, they didn't say much, just a few comments about the new ice cream flavor, how Gabriel mispronounced an order, and how he left his car keys at the counter. Those little things, clumsy, real, unpolished, were the clearest signs that something had begun. A second chance, even late, is still a chance, and this time I wouldn't be the one to stand in its way. Gabriel began showing up regularly, but never forcefully, never demanding attention. He quietly sent messages to each of them. Not long, not dramatic, just, if you're free, I'm at the little bookstore near campus, found some interesting titles, or discovered a sandwich place near the dorms, saving it for next time if you're curious. At first, the kids didn't reply, but slowly each one began to respond in their own way. Tyler was first, the most reserved, yet too curious to resist. One day, after class, he walked into the cafe where Gabriel was waiting. No announcement, no handshake, just pulled up a chair and said, I've got 30 minutes. If you want to ask something, do it. Gabriel didn't ask. Instead, he told a ridiculous story about losing his wallet in college and having to photocopy IDs to survive. It was so absurd that Tyler burst out laughing, a rare laugh unexpectedly sparked in their first real conversation. Alina was different. She kept her distance, always leaning slightly toward the door, as if ready to leave at any moment. But when Gabriel casually mentioned a local art exhibit, her passion, her eyes lit up. By their second meeting, she brought her sketchbook. They talked for nearly 2 hours. Not once did she say the word father. Lucas, sharp, cautious, and never easy, challenged Gabriel with probing questions. Why now? What if we don't let you in? Gabriel never had perfect answers, but each time he looked him straight in the eye and said, I don't have the right answers, but I'm not disappearing again. And slowly, Lucas stopped flinching when Gabriel said his name. Isla was the last to open up, but the fastest to change once she did. One rainy autumn afternoon, Isla texted Gabriel, Bus stuck, you free. He showed up in 12 minutes with a raincoat and a small umbrella. She didn't say much during the ride, but when she got out, she left a note in the glove box. Thanks for coming. I watched everything from afar. I didn't interfere, didn't guide. I simply observed quietly as the changes unfolded, like a mother standing at the edge of a river, watching her children choose their own bridges to cross. One late evening, after all 4 had returned home, I saw them gathered around the kitchen table, chatting aimlessly. Tyler talked about the art exhibit he went to with Elena and Gabriel. Lucas teased Isla for calling him this year's most weatherman. Elena just smiled quietly as Lucas mimicked Gabriel's voice when he got lost. I didn't join the conversation. I stood at the doorway, hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea, feeling something slowly growing between these people who were once strangers. As I headed upstairs, my phone buzzed. A message from Gabriel. "Thank you for not closing every door." I stared at the screen for a long time, but didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I wasn't ready to say thank you. Because deep inside, one question still hadn't been answered. The real reason he left back then, was it really just because I couldn't have children? Or was there something else, something he still hadn't found the courage to say? One early autumn evening, with a chill in the air and yellow leaves covering the sidewalks, Isla walked into the kitchen with a question that brought everything to a halt. "Do you ever regret it?" It sounded gentle, almost like a sigh, but coming from Isla, our youngest, the softest, and most sensitive of them all, it carried a weight no one had dared touch until now. Gabriel was slicing apples. His hand froze mid-motion. The knife tapped softly against the cutting board, then went still. He looked up and met Isla's eyes, eyes that mirrored a younger Samantha's, clear but piercing through every wall. No one said a word. Tyler, Elena, and Lucas all turned toward Gabriel as if they too had been waiting for that answer. Gabriel set the knife down, wiped his hands on a dish towel, and pulled out a chair across from Isla. He didn't deflect, he didn't sigh, he just sat in silence for a long beat before speaking in a low, hoarse voice, raw and honest. "Yes," he said, "every single day." Elena tilted her head. "What do you regret?" Gabriel looked at each face around the table, memories that had never existed in his life, yet now felt achingly real. "I regret not being brave enough to stay," he said, "for letting fear overpower love, for walking away instead of fighting, and most of all, for missing every single one of your firsts." No one interrupted. There were no excuses, no justifications. Gabriel continued, his voice steadier now. "I once thought I needed a perfect family, the kind everyone expects. But in the end, what I truly needed are the people sitting right here. No matter how late I realized it." Lucas still had his arms crossed, but his eyes had softened. Elena rested her chin on her hand, no longer watching him with skepticism. Tyler gave the smallest nod, barely noticeable. Only Isla kept her gaze steady. "So what do you want now?" Isla asked. "Just one thing," Gabriel replied, "the chance to not miss anything else. If you'll let me." A long silence followed, not heavy but contemplative, the kind of silence where hearts weigh old wounds against the possibility of something new. That night, after the kids went upstairs, I walked into the kitchen. Gabriel was still sitting there, eyes on the window where the first winds of fall rustled through the trees. "I heard everything," I said, pulling out a chair across from him. He looked at me, not defensive, not expecting praise or forgiveness. "They've changed," I said, "but not because you tried to do something grand, because you were honest." Gabriel smiled faintly. "It's the only thing I have left." I looked at him quietly. "And sometimes that's all it takes." He nodded, eyes never leaving mine. "What about you?" I knew that question would come, but I didn't have an answer. Not because I hadn't forgiven, but because some wounds no longer hurt, yet still leave scars. "I still have something I need to ask you," I said, "but not tonight." Gabriel understood. He didn't press. When he left, I stood at the porch, watching his silhouette disappear into the soft glow of the streetlights. Part of me felt lighter. Part of me remained cautious, because sincerity is the beginning, but to keep trust, that takes more, and I knew the real test was still ahead. Gabriel began visiting more regularly, but never crossed any lines. He didn't overstay, didn't disrupt the kids' routines, never asked anything of me. Sometimes he helped Isla with her science presentation, escorted Elena to a local photo exhibit, or played chess with Tyler late into the night. With Lucas, it was still a push and pull, but at least he no longer walked away when Gabriel showed up on the porch. And me? I didn't interfere. I just watched. I watched how Gabriel tried without rushing, without scheming, like he was carefully patching a fabric that had long since worn thin. I saw the way he looked at the kids, how he gently stepped into each moment as if he'd found a treasure he thought was gone. And I watched myself, a woman who once resented him so deeply she wanted to forget his name, now feeling her heart soften in the most unsettling way. One late evening after the kids had gone upstairs, I brewed 2 cups of tea and walked out to the back porch, where we could see the shimmering city lights in the distance and hear autumn winds whispering through the old maples. Gabriel was there, leaning lightly on the railing, quietly watching. I handed him a cup, and we said nothing for a while. "This view," he said softly, "you once dreamed of sitting here every night with the kids, your husband, and a cat named Felix." I laughed, unable to hide it. "I hate cats." "I know," Gabriel smiled, "but you still said it. Back then, you thought dreaming a little might make the pain easier." I didn't deny it. It did. Back then, I thought you were the irreplaceable part of that picture. Gabriel turned to me, his eyes catching a faint glow in the dark. "I don't want to go back to that time," he said gently, "because I know I ruined it. But if I could, I'd like to help you paint a new one, not the same as before, not perfect, but maybe something different." I gripped my mug, its warmth spreading to my fingers. But inside I felt another kind of wind, a wind of hesitation, and a question that had never been answered. "Gabriel," I said, locking eyes with him, "the day you left, was it really just about the children?" He froze. The wind blew stronger, as if even nature was holding its breath. "No," he whispered, eyes dropping. His voice grew heavier. "The truth is, I panicked. I looked at the future and didn't see myself as someone good enough to stand by you. You were so strong, and I was weaker than I ever wanted to admit." His answer stung me, not because it hurt, but because it felt like the missing piece finally falling into place. "I remember thinking," I said quietly, "if you had just said that, we could have found a way together, but you went silent and disappeared." "I know," Gabriel whispered, "and that's something I'll regret for the rest of my life." Another pause. Then I lifted my head, gazing at the city lights that shimmered like falling stars. "We can't go back," I said slowly. "Too much has changed. I'm not the woman who once wrote Felix's name in her diary." Gabriel gave a soft laugh, but didn't interrupt. "But," I continued, "if you truly want to stay for the kids, for yourself, and if you're willing to accept an imperfect beginning," I turned to him, meeting a gaze filled with longing but no pressure, "then maybe we can become something else." Gabriel said nothing, he just nodded, and for the first time in nearly 20 years, we stood side by side with nothing broken between us. Samantha's story reminds us that sometimes the deepest wounds become the foundation for the most lasting healing. The past may be filled with pain and misunderstanding, but honesty, patience, and accountability can open a new door, not to what was, but to something more real. In life, we can't undo our mistakes, but we can always choose how we move forward with courage and grace. What do you think about Samantha's journey and the choice she made? Would you give someone a second chance after being abandoned? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family,